Mrs. Elena Carter lived in a small, quiet house at the end of Maplewood Lane. It was an older home, with faded blue paint and flower pots lining the front steps. The roof had a few worn shingles and the fence creaked when the wind blew too hard. But inside it was warm, clean, and filled with love. Elena, a kind woman in her late 30s, shared the house with her 12-year-old daughter Lily. Elena worked from home, running a small online shop where she sold handmade crafts and decorations. She didn't talk much to her neighbors, not because she didn't want to, but because she often felt out of place. Many of the families in the neighborhood were wealthy, with brand new cars, giant houses, and expensive clothes. Elena and Lily lived simply, wearing hand-me-downs and shopping carefully to save money. Their house stood next to one of the biggest on the street. The Miller family lived there, tall gates, fancy lights, a brand new silver SUV in the driveway. Brandon Miller, their 16-year-old son, was popular at school. He always wore designer sneakers and had the newest phone. People liked him because he was loud, confident, and always surrounded by friends. Though their houses were side by side, the Carters and Millers lived in two different worlds. Sometimes, when Elena watered her garden or swept the porch, Mrs. Miller would wave with a polite smile but never stop to chat. Brandon would pass by with his backpack and earbuds in, never offering a hello. Once at a neighborhood yard sale, Elena had tried to start a conversation with Mrs. Miller about school supplies for their kids. "Oh, Mrs. Miller said lightly, glancing at Elena's worn sweater, "Brandon's school list is all custom this year. Private school stuff, you know, it's just different." She smiled again, not unkindly, but the message was clear. Lily sometimes asked her mother why they didn't have a car with heated seats or go on trips like the other families. Elena always answered the same way, gently, "We may not have a lot, but we have enough and we have each other." To many in the neighborhood, the Carters were invisible, but Elena didn't mind. She knew that kindness mattered more than money, though not everyone agreed. It was a sunny Thursday afternoon and school had just let out. Brandon Miller walked down Maplewood Lane with two of his friends, laughing loudly. They were all dressed in brand new sneakers and expensive jackets, the kind that cost more than Elena Carter made in a week. As they neared Brandon's house, the boys passed by Elena's front yard. She was kneeling in the grass, pulling weeds from her small garden. Her hands were covered in dirt, and her hair was tied up in a messy bun. Lily was sitting nearby, reading a book for school. One of Brandon's friends nudged him. "Man, how do people live like that?" he said, looking at the worn fence and old flower pots. Brandon laughed. "That house, it's so poor it looks like it came out of a time machine. Bet they can't even afford air conditioning." The boys cracked up, not caring who heard. Elena froze, her hand still on a weed. Her heart sank, and for a second she felt her face flush with heat. She looked over at Lily, who had gone still, her eyes wide. Lily didn't say anything right away. She simply stood up and walked slowly toward the porch. Elena followed her, brushing the dirt off her pants. Inside, Lily sat down at the kitchen table. "Why did he say that about us?" she asked, her voice small. "Are we poor, Mommy?" Elena sat across from her and took her hand. She could feel the hurt in her daughter's voice. "We don't have as much money as some people, sweetheart," she said softly, "but that doesn't make us less than them. We work hard. We have a home, food, and love. That's what really matters. But why do they act like we're nothing?" Lily whispered. Elena didn't answer right away. She looked out the window at the big Miller house, shining in the afternoon light. She remembered the way Brandon had laughed, the way his friends joined in. "They don't understand," she said at last. "Sometimes when people have too much, they forget what it's like to be kind." Lily nodded, but the sadness stayed in her eyes. That night, after Lily went to bed, Elena sat in the living room with a cup of tea. Her hands still smelled like soil, but her mind was somewhere else. She wasn't angry, not really. What she felt was deeper, like something long ignored had been touched. She had worked hard for everything they had. No one saw the late nights, the tight budgets, the skipped vacations. And yet, to some people, it would never be enough. She looked around their small home. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. And she had just gotten a phone call that morning, one that could change everything. The morning after Brandon's cruel words, Elena Carter stood at the kitchen sink, staring out the window. The sun was rising slowly over the rooftops, casting a soft glow on the neighborhood. Lily was still asleep upstairs and the house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Elena's mind drifted back to a time when life was very different. Years ago, before the world changed, she had lived in a house even bigger than the Millers. She and her husband Michael had worked hard to build a comfortable life. He was a software engineer, and she had managed a small design firm. Their house had been filled with music, laughter, and love. Elena wore nice clothes then, and they traveled often. Lily had been just a toddler, always running around with her little stuffed bear. Then everything fell apart. Michael had gotten sick. It started with headaches and fatigue, and then came the hospital visits, the bills, the fear. Elena had watched the man she loved fade away, no matter how hard the doctors tried. After he passed, grief wrapped itself around her like a heavy blanket. She had lost not just her husband but her best friend, her partner, her safety. To stay afloat, Elena had sold their home, closed her business, and moved into the small house on Maplewood Lane. It was all she could afford. She used the money from the sale to start over, slowly. She learned to sew, paint, and make home goods she sold online. Bit by bit, she rebuilt something stable for herself and Lily. People in the neighborhood didn't know that story. They saw a woman who drove an old car and wore the same coat every winter. They didn't see the strength behind her quiet eyes or the way she fought each day to protect her daughter from the pain of the past. Elena took a deep breath and turned away from the window. On the table, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her old friend Mia, a real estate agent. Big opportunity just came up. Call me as soon as you can. Private deal. House on your street. Elena frowned slightly, curious. She picked up the phone and dialed. She didn't know it yet, but the offer she was about to hear would not only change her life, it would turn Brandon Miller's world upside down. Elena sat at the edge of her bed, phone pressed to her ear. The sun peeked through the curtains, casting lines of light on the floor. Mia's voice came through the speaker, excited but hushed. You won't believe this, Elena. The big house next to you, the Miller's place, is about to hit the market. Elena blinked. What? That house? Why? Financial trouble, Mia said. The dad's business took a hit. They've missed 2 mortgage payments already. They want to sell fast and quietly before anyone notices. I remembered you said once you were looking for an investment. I thought of you right away. Elena sat up straighter. She had saved for years, carefully investing and growing her small income. She never said much about it, but she had money tucked away, more than most would guess. She had studied, learned about real estate, and waited patiently for the right moment. Wait, are you saying I could buy it? She asked slowly. Yes, Mia replied. And here's the thing, they don't know who the buyer is yet. It's all private. I can handle the paperwork. If you're ready, it could be yours by next week. Elena's mind raced. Just yesterday, Brandon had laughed at her, called her poor in front of his friends. He had no idea who she was, or what she was capable of. But this wasn't about revenge, not truly, it was about her daughter. It was about showing Lily, and maybe even Brandon, that real worth isn't worn on your shoes or parked in your driveway. I need one night to think. Elena said softly. Of course, Mia agreed, but I'd act fast. These things move quickly. After the call, Elena walked into the kitchen and found Lily eating breakfast, her legs swinging under the table. Mom, Lily said between bites of toast. Do you ever wish we had a big house? Like Brandon's? Elena smiled. Sometimes, but I also think it's more important who lives inside a house, not how big it is. Lily nodded, though she still looked thoughtful. That night, Elena sat down at the dining table with her notepad, calculator, and savings plan. She reviewed everything, triple-checked the numbers, and called Mia back. Let's do it, she said, her voice calm and sure. I want the house. In just a few days, the papers were signed. No flashy announcement, no big moving truck. The Millers didn't even know who had bought the house, only that they had to leave by the end of the month. Elena didn't brag, she didn't gloat, but when she walked past their driveway the next morning, she did it with quiet confidence and a small knowing smile. The sky was gray the day the moving truck pulled up to the Miller house. Rain tapped lightly on the windows as Elena watched from her porch, a warm mug in her hands. She wasn't spying, just observing. It was a strange feeling, knowing what was coming, and who didn't see it yet. Brandon stood on the front steps, arms crossed, a deep frown on his face. His mother was rushing back and forth, carrying boxes and giving short instructions. His father stood silently by the garage, talking on the phone. The family looked smaller now, not because they had less, but because they had been brought back to reality. No one in the neighborhood knew the full truth yet. Most assumed the Millers were moving to a bigger place. A few noticed how fast the sale had gone through, but no one dared to ask. Later that afternoon, Mrs. Miller walked across the yard to Elena's door. She knocked, her polite smile stretched tight. "Elena," she said, "we just heard, you bought the house." Elena nodded, opening the door wider. "Yes, I did." There was a long pause. Mrs. Miller's eyes flicked toward the house behind her. "It's just surprising, we didn't expect you had that kind of money." Elena met her gaze calmly. Most people don't expect much from someone they think is beneath them. Mrs. Miller's cheeks flushed. "Well, we hope you'll take care of the place. It's a beautiful home." "I plan to," Elena said. "It will be a good place for Lily to grow up." That evening, Brandon walked past the Carter house, alone. No friends, no jokes. He paused when he saw Lily playing with chalk on the sidewalk. He hesitated, then muttered, "Did your mom really buy our house?" Lily looked up, surprised, then nodded. Brandon looked away, his face red. "I didn't mean what I said the other day." Lily stared at him for a moment. "Yes, you did, but it's okay." He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded and walked on. Inside, Elena watched from the window. She felt no pride in their pain, only a quiet peace. Sometimes, the world has a strange way of teaching lessons. In the days that followed, the neighborhood buzzed with quiet whispers. Word had spread. Mrs. Elena Carter, the woman in the small blue house with the worn fence, had bought the Grand Miller house. Some neighbors acted surprised, others embarrassed. A few even came by with sudden smiles and kind words, as if trying to make up for years of looking the other way. Brandon changed too. Slowly. At school, he didn't walk the halls with the same loud swagger. He still had his friends, but he seemed quieter. Less sure. One day, during lunch, he sat at the edge of the table and stared at his sandwich like it was the most important thing in the world. He noticed Lily more now, how she always raised her hand in class, how she helped the younger students zip up their coats, how she smiled at everyone, even when they didn't smile back. He remembered the way he'd laughed at her house, the way his words had made her eyes drop to the ground. It made his stomach twist. After school one afternoon, he found her sitting under a tree, reading. "Hey," he said, awkwardly rubbing the back of his neck. I wanted to say I'm sorry for what I said. It was stupid." Lily closed her book and looked up at him. "Why did you say it?" He shrugged. "I guess I thought it was funny. Or cool. I don't know. I didn't think it would hurt you." "It did," she said softly. "But I forgive you." Brandon nodded, grateful but unsure of what to do next. "Your mom's kind of awesome." Lily smiled. "Yeah, she is." That night, Brandon helped his parents unpack boxes in their new smaller house across town. It wasn't as shiny or big. But for the first time he started to notice other things, like the way his dad laughed more without all the pressure, or how his mom actually sat down for dinner instead of checking her phone. At her old home, Elena stood in the kitchen, painting over scuff marks and fixing a loose drawer. She wasn't moving in just yet. She had plans to fix it up right, maybe even rent it out. She wasn't in a rush, she had already won the moment that mattered. A few weeks later, the big white house on Maplewood Lane looked different. Not louder or flashier, but calmer, warmer. Fresh flowers bloomed in the front garden. The porch had been swept clean, and a handmade wooden welcome sign hung by the front door. Elena and Lily had moved in quietly, just as they'd lived, without drama or show. They didn't throw a big party or tell the neighbors. They simply arrived with their small moving truck, a few boxes and the same old furniture. It wasn't about proving anything, it was about starting fresh, somewhere safe and full of light. Lily decorated her new room with posters, fairy lights, and the same stuffed bear she'd had since she was 3. She stood by the window that first night, looking down at the street where she'd grown up. "It doesn't feel like someone else's house anymore," she said. "It feels like ours." Elena smiled from the doorway. "Because it is." Back in their old home, the small blue one, repairs had started. Elena hired a local contractor and made plans to turn it into a rental home for families who needed a fresh start. She remembered what it was like to have nowhere to go, and she wanted her old home to be a place of comfort for someone else. At school, Lily started getting more smiles from classmates. Brandon was still quiet, but now he nodded hello when he saw her. Sometimes he helped carry books or picked up someone's dropped pencil without being asked. He didn't try to be the center of attention anymore. Something in him had changed. One afternoon, Elena and Lily sat on their new porch, sipping lemonade. The sky was soft and orange with sunset. "Do you think people will stop calling us poor now?" Lily asked. Elena reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "I don't really care if they do," she said. "Because the truth never lived in their words. It lives in what we know, who we are. And we've always had more than they could see." Lily leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. The wind rustled the trees gently, as if it too understood. Sometimes the quietest victories are the strongest. Sometimes the best answer doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs to be lived. If this story moved you or made you think differently about kindness, respect, or what it truly means to have value, please like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts below. Have you ever been judged for what you have or don't have? Let's start a conversation about empathy, understanding, and the quiet power of staying true to yourself.